The great meeting hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with the usual chatter of 1,000 different species. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in their designated areas, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electronic pulses that the universal translators worked hard to convert into understandable speech. Admiral Lee Do-hyun sat in the human section, his dark uniform standing out among the colorful robes and biosuits worn by other species. His weathered face showed the patience of someone who had attended too many of these meetings, but his eyes remained alert and focused. The council had been discussing trade routes for the past 3 hours when the emergency signal cut through all communications. Every screen in the massive chamber flickered to red, and a piercing alarm made even the deaf species aware that something was very wrong. The voice of the council's emergency coordinator echoed through the hall, translating automatically into every known language. Priority 1 distress signal incoming from the Kelthan system. All representatives please maintain position for emergency broadcast. The massive central screen activated, showing the image of a being that many recognized as a Kelthani. The species was known throughout the galaxy for their peaceful nature and incredible artistic abilities. Their homeworld was famous for producing the most beautiful sculptures and paintings in known space. The being on the screen, however, looked nothing like the calm and serene Kelthani that most had met before. Ambassador Velthera's usually smooth blue skin was pale and trembling. Her large eyes, normally filled with wisdom and kindness, now showed pure terror. When she spoke, her voice cracked with desperation that needed no translation to understand. Honored council members, I am Ambassador Velthera of the Kelthani Republic. I speak to you now from our homeworld of SciFiPrime, though I do not know if we will survive to see your response. Her hands shook as she continued. 3 days ago, ships belonging to the Vorthak Empire appeared in our system. They demand our complete surrender and the enslavement of our entire population. We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons capable of fighting such a force. Our small defense ships were destroyed in the first hour of their arrival. The image shifted to show the view outside her window. Massive dark ships filled the sky, their hulls covered in weapon ports and armor plating. The ships were so large they blocked out the sun, casting the Kelthani cities below into an artificial twilight. Even through the screen, the menace of the Vorthak fleet was clear to everyone watching. They have given us 7 standard days to surrender completely, or they will begin destroying our cities one by one. After that, they plan to strip mine our 3 colony worlds and sell our people as slaves to the highest bidder. We have 4 days left. Velthara's voice broke completely now. Please, we beg the council for help. We have children, families, artists who have never harmed anyone. We do not deserve this fate. The transmission ended, leaving the Great Hall in complete silence. For nearly a full minute, no one spoke. The weight of what they had just witnessed settled on every being present. Finally, the council speaker, an ancient being from the Zephyrian Collective, called for emergency session. Protocols. Representatives, we have heard the plea of the Kelthani people. The floor is now open for immediate discussion on possible responses to this crisis. What followed was exactly what Admiral Do-hyun had expected, and exactly what made him sick too: his stomach. One by one, representatives stood to explain why their species could not help. The Altarians claimed their fleet was too far away to arrive in time. The Crystalline Federation said their ships were not designed for combat against Vorthak technology. The Melodic Confederation worried that getting involved would bring Vorthak attention to their own peaceful worlds. Each excuse was perfectly logical and completely cowardly. Do-hyun had seen this same pattern dozens of times since humanity had joined the Council 30 years ago. When faced with any real threat, the galaxy's civilized species would find every reason to avoid getting involved. They preferred to discuss and debate until the crisis either solved itself or became someone else's problem. Dr. Kim Jae-won, who served as humanity's diplomatic advisor, leaned over to whisper in Do-hyun's ear. The Vorthak Empire has over 500 ships in that system. Their standard operating procedure is to make an example of any species that resists them. Even if the other species wanted to help, combining all their available military forces would barely match what the Vorthak have committed to this operation. Do-hyun nodded but said nothing. He was doing calculations in his head, the same kind of tactical planning that had kept him alive through 3 wars and earned him command of humanity's entire defense fleet. 500 Vorthak ships was indeed a large force, larger than what any single council species could handle. But Do-hyun was not thinking like a council species. The debate continued for another hour, with various representatives suggesting diplomatic solutions, economic sanctions, and formal protests. The Ethereal Collective proposed sending a strongly worded message to the Vorthak High Command. The Silicon Republic suggested offering the Vorthak alternative trade agreements. Each suggestion was more useless than the last, and everyone in the room knew it. Finally, when it became clear that no other species was willing to actually do anything, Admiral Do-hyun stood up. The human section was located near the back of the hall, and his movement caught the attention of several nearby representatives. Humans were still considered newcomers to galactic society, and their opinions were rarely taken seriously by the older, more established species. "The chair recognizes Admiral Lee Do-hyun of the Human Defense Coalition," announced the council speaker, though his tone suggested he expected another useless suggestion. Do-hyun walked to the center of the hall, where speakers traditionally stood, to address the full assembly. His boots clicked against the polished floor, the sound echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. When he reached the speaking platform, he turned to face the assembled representatives, his expression calm and controlled. "Honored representatives," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic systems. "I have listened to your concerns and your suggestions. I understand that the Vorthak Empire represents a significant military threat, and that none of your individual fleets feel capable of confronting them directly." Several representatives nodded, apparently relieved that the human understood the impossible nature of the situation. "However," Do-hyun continued, "the Human Defense Coalition has different capabilities and different priorities. We volunteer to handle this situation." The hall erupted in surprised chatter. The Altarian representative actually laughed out loud, a sound like crystal chimes in a windstorm. "Admiral, with respect, humanity has been part of this council for only 30 years. Your species has never faced a threat like the Vorthak Empire. They have conquered dozens of systems and enslaved billions of beings. This is not a situation that can be handled by good intentions and enthusiasm." Do-hyun's expression did not change. "Representative Cathara, you are correct that humanity is new to galactic society. You are also correct that we have never fought the Vorthak Empire specifically." He paused, letting his words sink in. "However, you are mistaken about our capabilities. We will depart for the Kelthan system immediately and resolve this crisis." The Crystalline Federation's representative, a being made of living mineral that communicated through harmonic vibrations, spoke next. "Admiral Do-hyun, surely you understand that the Vorthak have committed over 500 warships to this operation. Even if humanity possessed such a fleet, which our intelligence suggests you do not, the Vorthak are experienced in conquest. They have weapons and tactics developed over centuries of successful campaigns. Your intelligence is incomplete," Do-hyun replied simply. "The human defense fleet will handle this situation. The Kelthani people will not be enslaved or murdered while we have the power to prevent it." Dr. Kim Jae-won joined Do-hyun on the platform, carrying a datapad. "The human fleet can reach the Kelthan system in 18 standard hours. We will broadcast our departure and arrival schedules to all council members so you can monitor our progress." The council speaker looked genuinely confused. "Admiral, I must ask directly. Exactly how many ships does humanity intend to send against a Vorthak force of 500 vessels?" Do-hyun smiled for the first time since the emergency session had begun. It was not a pleasant smile. "All of them." The command center of Earth's Luna base hummed with activity that had not been seen since the Terran Independence War 35 years earlier. General Song Minho stood before the largest tactical display in human space, watching as status reports flooded in from every corner of the solar system and beyond. Ships that had been scattered across human territory for routine patrols, training exercises, and diplomatic missions were now converging on predetermined rally points with military precision that impressed even veteran officers. Captain Park Hye-jin watched the display from her position near the communications array. As commander of the flagship Seoul's Vengeance, she had seen plenty of fleet exercises, but nothing on this scale. The numbers scrolling across her personal tablet told a story that would have shocked the Galactic Council representatives who had dismissed humanity's military capabilities just hours earlier. Current fleet status report, General Song called out to the room. Major Yoon Tae-hyung, leader of the elite Ghost Squadron, read from his datapad without looking up. Battle Group Alpha reporting full readiness. 47 ships including 12 heavy cruisers and the dreadnought Incheon's Fury. Battle Group Beta standing by with 38 ships, mostly destroyers and frigates. Battle Group Gamma finishing. Final preparations. 41 ships including our stealth destroyers and the carrier wings. He paused to check another screen. Battle Group Delta reports ready for departure in 6 hours. 39 ships including specialized assault vessels and marine transports. Reserve Fleet Epsilon will be ready in 12 hours. 35 ships holding back for system defense and emergency response. Captain Park did the math quickly in her head. That puts us at exactly 200 ships, not counting support vessels and supply lines. Correct, General Song confirmed. Every human military vessel capable of faster-than-light travel and combat operations. The entire human defense fleet, just as Admiral Do-hyun promised the Council. Engineer Choi Soo-min looked up from her weapon systems analysis. General, I've been reviewing the intelligence reports on Vorthak ship design and capabilities. Their vessels are built for intimidation and overwhelming firepower against civilian targets. They rely heavily on energy shields and mass driver weapons. Their tactical doctrine appears to be based on psychological warfare, followed by brute force bombardment. And our assessment of their weaknesses? General Song asked. Dr. Kim Jae-won, who had returned from the council session just hours earlier, stepped forward with a detailed report. The Vorthak have never encountered serious military resistance. Every species they have conquered either surrendered immediately or put up token resistance with converted civilian ships. They have no experience fighting an enemy that actually shoots back with the intention of winning. He activated a holographic display showing Vorthak ship formations from previous conquests. Look at their standard attack pattern. They form a wall formation designed to maximize visual intimidation. Every ship fires simultaneously to create massive energy discharges that terrify their enemies into surrender. It's very impressive against merchant vessels and exploration ships. Captain Park studied the formation with a tactical officer's eye. That formation would be a massacre against proper warships. They're exposing their entire fleet to concentrated fire while limiting their own ability to maneuver or provide mutual support. Exactly, Dr. Kim confirmed. The Vorthak Empire's greatest strength is their reputation. They win battles before they start because their enemies are too frightened to fight effectively. Remove that psychological advantage, and their actual military capabilities become much less impressive. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Tae-hyung pulled up his own analysis. I've been studying their ship-to-ship combat records from the few times they've faced any resistance. Their accuracy decreases significantly when under fire. Their shield technology is designed to absorb energy weapons, but appears vulnerable to kinetic projectiles. Most importantly, they have never faced coordinated fighter attacks or boarding actions. General Song nodded approvingly. Which brings us to the fundamental difference between their approach and ours. The Vorthak fight to conquer and enslave. We fight to win. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications of that statement. Human military doctrine had evolved from centuries of warfare on a planet where survival required constant adaptation and innovation. Every human ship was designed with the assumption that it would face enemy fire and need to keep fighting while damaged. Every weapon system had backup power supplies and redundant targeting computers. Every tactical formation was based on maximizing damage to the enemy while minimizing losses to friendly forces. Engineer Choi Soo-min brought up the specifications for the Seoul's Vengeance on the main display. Our flagship alone carries more firepower than most species' entire fleets. 8 heavy plasma cannons, 46 missile tubes, 62-point defense systems, and a full wing of 96 fighters. The Vorthak intelligence we've seen suggests their largest ships carry perhaps half that amount. and they've never designed their weapons with actual military targets in mind. "What about our Marine forces?" General Song asked. Major Lim Sunwoo, who had been quietly reviewing boarding protocols, stepped forward. 12,000 Marines distributed across the fleet, with full-powered armor and combat experience. The Vorthak appear to rely on automated systems and slave labor for most ship operations. Their actual military personnel are probably outnumbered by our Marines by a significant margin. Captain Park looked around the room at the assembled officers and specialists. "Does anyone here actually think this will be difficult?" The question was met with thoughtful silence rather than immediate answers. These were professional military officers who had spent their careers preparing for exactly this kind of operation. They knew better than to underestimate any enemy, but they also understood their own capabilities. Dr. Kim Jae-won spoke first. "The tactical situation strongly favors us. We have superior technology, better training, more experience with actual combat, and complete strategic surprise. The Vorthak have no idea what human military capabilities actually look like. The numerical disadvantage is real," Major Yoon pointed out. 500 ships against 200, but numbers only matter if all those ships can fight effectively. If their formation doctrine is as predictable as it appears, we can eliminate large portions of their fleet before they can adapt. Engineer Choi nodded in agreement. "Our stealth technology alone should let us position our forces exactly where we want them before the battle begins. The Vorthak will be fighting blind while we have complete sensor coverage of the entire system." General Song walked to the center of the room, his expression serious but confident. "I want everyone to understand something clearly. We are not going to the Kelthan system to engage in a fair fight or to prove how brave we are. We are going there to completely destroy the Vorthak threat and ensure that no other species ever has to face this situation again." He paused to look at each officer individually. "The other Council species see us as newcomers who don't understand galactic realities. They think we're naive idealists who will learn harsh lessons about the real universe. They're about to discover that Earth didn't produce idealists. Earth produced survivors, and survivors don't fight fair when innocent people are threatened." Captain Park felt a familiar sensation, the same feeling she had experienced before every major operation in her career. It was not excitement or bloodlust, but rather the calm focus that came from knowing exactly what needed to be done and having the tools to do it properly. "Final equipment status report," she called out. The responses came quickly and efficiently. Weapon systems at full readiness. Shield generators operating at maximum capacity. Fighter wings armed and ready for immediate launch. Marine assault teams equipped and standing by for boarding operations. Supply lines established and secure. Every ship in the fleet reported ready for immediate departure. Admiral Do-hyun's voice came over the communication system from his flagship. "All battle group commanders, this is Admiral Do-hyun. We depart for the Kelthan system in 1 hour. Our mission parameters are simple. Eliminate the Vorthak threat completely and ensure the safety of the Kelthani people. Rules of engagement are full combat authorization. Any Vorthak vessel that does not immediately withdraw from Kelthani space will be considered hostile and destroyed." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I want every member of this fleet to understand what we represent. We are not just fighting for the Kelthani. We are establishing humanity's position in galactic society. After today, every species in the galaxy will know that humans protect those who cannot protect themselves, and that threatening innocent civilians will bring swift and total retaliation." Captain Park looked around the command center one final time, noting the calm professionalism of every person present. These were not warriors seeking glory or politicians making speeches. These were military professionals doing their job, and their job was to solve problems that diplomacy could not handle. "All ships report ready for departure," came the announcement from Fleet Control. "Then let's go introduce the Vorthak Empire to human military doctrine," Admiral Do-hyun's voice replied. The Kelthan system looked like a vision of hell when the human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. Massive Vorthak ships hung in space like mechanical vultures, their dark hulls blocking the light from the system's star. The beautiful, blue and green world of SciFiPrime was barely visible through the shadows cast by the siege fleet, while the planet's 3 moons showed the scorch marks of orbital bombardment used for intimidation. War leader Grimthax stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, surveying his domain with satisfaction. The Kelthani had proven even easier to terrorize than most species, and their artistic treasures would bring excellent prices in the slave markets. His fleet of 512 ships represented the largest single force the Vorthak Empire had ever assembled, a testament to how valuable this system's resources were expected to be. War leader, our sensors are detecting new faster-than-light signatures at the edge of the system, reported his tactical officer, a smaller Vorthak whose scarred hide showed evidence of previous battles. Grimthax's massive form turned toward the display, his 4 arms adjusting various controls to get a better view of the newcomers. How many ships and what configuration? Approximately 200 vessels, War Leader. Their design patterns are unfamiliar to our databases. They appear to be maintaining formation at maximum sensor range. The War Leader's mood improved even further. 200 ships suggests another minor species trying to play hero for the Kelthani. Signal the Galactic Council frequency and inform these newcomers that they are interfering with legitimate Vorthak operations. Give them the standard ultimatum: withdraw immediately or be destroyed. On the human flagship Soul's Vengeance, Captain Park Hyojin watched the Vorthak fleet through her ship's advanced sensors. The enemy formation was exactly what Dr. Kim had predicted, a massive wall designed for maximum psychological impact with minimal tactical flexibility. Every Vorthak ship was positioned to create the most intimidating visual display possible, but they had also created the perfect target for coordinated attack. Captain, we're receiving a communication from the Vorthak flagship, reported Ensign Bei Jiwoo from the communication station. The young officer had graduated from the academy just 6 months earlier, but her calm professionalism under pressure had already impressed the senior staff. Put it on screen, Ensign, Captain Park ordered. The main display flickered to show the interior of a Vorthak command center. War leader Grimthax dominated the screen, his reptilian features twisted into what his species probably considered a terrifying expression. His voice came through the translators as a deep rumble filled with menace and arrogance. Unknown vessels, you have entered space claimed by the Vorthak Empire. I am War Leader Grimthax, commander of the Conquest Fleet currently bringing civilization to the Kelthani system. You will identify yourselves immediately and explain why you dare to interrupt our operations. Captain Park glanced at Admiral Do-hyun, who nodded slightly. This was exactly the kind of response they had expected from a species used to easy victories through intimidation. Ensign Bei opened the communication channel, her voice steady and professional despite the historic nature of the moment. War Leader Grimthax, this is the Human Defense Fleet responding to the distress call from the Kelthani Republic. I am Ensign Bei Jiwoo representing Admiral Lee Do-hyun, commander of this task force. Grimthax's expression showed confusion rather than fear. Human? Our databases show no record of any significant military power by that designation. Are you some sort of mercenary force hired by the Kelthani? We are representatives of the Human Defense Coalition, members of the Galactic Council, Ensign Bei replied calmly. You have been engaged in hostile actions against a peaceful member species. You have exactly 60 seconds to begin withdrawing all Vorthak forces from Kelthani space, or we will remove you by force. The communication channel filled with what could only be described as laughter, though it sounded more like the roar of some massive predator. War leader Grimthax's entire bridge crew seemed to find the human ultimatum hilarious. Remove us by force? Grimthax managed between his roaring laughs. Small beings, do you have any idea what you are facing? This fleet has conquered 47 star systems. We have enslaved billions and destroyed anyone foolish enough to resist us. Your 200 ships are nothing compared to the might of the Vorthak Empire. On the Soul's Vengeance, Major Lim Sunwoo checked his chronometer and looked at Admiral Do-hyun. 30 seconds remaining, sir. Admiral Do-hyun stepped into view of the communication screen, his expression completely calm. War Leader Grimthax, my name is Admiral Lee Do-hyun. I represent a species that evolved on a planet so dangerous that the rest of the galaxy calls it a death world. We have been fighting and winning wars since before your empire existed. This is your final warning. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." Grimthax leaned forward, his massive form filling most of the screen. "Admiral of the Deathworld humans, you clearly do not understand your situation. We have over 500 warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities. Your pathetic little fleet cannot possibly challenge the power of the Vorthak Empire. I will give you one chance to surrender and serve us as slaves, which is more mercy than we usually show." "Time's up," Major Lim announced quietly. Admiral Do-hyun's expression did not change, but something in his eyes went completely cold. "War Leader Grimthax, you have had your warning. Ensign Bay, close the channel." The screen went dark, leaving the human command center in sudden silence. For a moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the ship's systems and the soft beeping of various monitoring equipment. "All ships, this is Admiral Do-hyun," came the announcement over the fleet communication system. "Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten innocent people in human space." Throughout the human fleet, ships that had been maintaining a peaceful formation suddenly shifted into combat positions. The change was so smooth and coordinated that it looked like a single organism adapting to a threat. Stealth destroyers activated, their cloaking systems and vanished from sensors. Fighter carriers began launching their squadrons in massive waves. Heavy cruisers and battleships powered up weapon systems that had been designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat. On the Vorthak flagship, tactical officers stared at their displays in confusion. "War Leader, the human ships are changing formation, but our sensors cannot track approximately 30 of their vessels. They appear to have some sort of advanced stealth technology." Grimthax was no longer laughing. "Impossible. No species in the galaxy has stealth technology that can hide entire warships from Vorthak sensors. War Leader, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the human fleet. They appear to be powering up weapon systems far more advanced than anything in our databases." For the first time in his career, War Leader Grimthax felt something he had not experienced since his youth: uncertainty. The human ships were not behaving like any enemy he had faced before. Instead of fleeing or sending desperate pleas for mercy, they were actively preparing for battle. "How many fighters are launching from their ships?" he demanded. The tactical officer's voice was barely audible. "War Leader, our count shows over 8,000 individual fighter craft launching from the human fleet. That's more fighters than most species have in their entire military." Grimthax stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he was seeing. 8,000 fighters meant the human ships were designed as dedicated military vessels, not converted civilian craft. The stealth technology suggested research and development capabilities that rivaled or exceeded Vorthak science. The calm, professionalism of their communications indicated experienced military personnel rather than desperate volunteers. "War Leader, what are your orders?" asked his second-in-command. Grimthax realized that for the first time in over 2 decades of conquest, he was facing an actual military force rather than helpless civilians. The humans had not been intimidated by his threats or impressed by his reputation. They had given him a chance to withdraw, and when he refused, they had calmly prepared to destroy him. "Signal all ships," he ordered, his voice lacking its earlier confidence. "Combat formation, prepare for battle, and send a priority message to Vorthak High Command. We may have found something unexpected in this system." On the Soul's Vengeance, Captain Park watched the enemy fleet struggle to reorganize from their intimidation formation into something resembling a combat deployment. "Admiral, the Vorthak are trying to adapt to actual military tactics, but they're having significant coordination problems. It appears they've never had to change formations under pressure before." Admiral Do-hyun nodded, studying the enemy positions with the eye of someone who had been fighting battles since before most of his crew were born. "Captain Park, signal Commodore Seo and his stealth squadron. Begin Phase 2 of the attack plan. It's time to teach the Vorthak Empire why Earth is called a death world." The battle began without warning, and with the kind of precision that only came from years of training and preparation. Commodore Seo Ji-hoon's stealth destroyer squadron materialized inside the Vorthak formation, like ghosts becoming solid, their cloaking systems dropping just long enough to unleash devastating volleys of plasma fire and kinetic projectiles before vanishing again into electronic invisibility. War leader Grimthax watched in horror as 12 of his ships exploded in the first 30 seconds of combat. The human stealth vessels had appeared exactly where his formation was weakest, targeting command ships and heavy cruisers with surgical precision. "How did they get inside our perimeter?" he roared at his tactical officers. "Unknown, war leader. Our sensors show no trace of their approach. They must have technology far beyond our current understanding." The Vorthak fleet tried to respond with their traditional wall formation, 500 ships firing simultaneously in a massive display of energy weapons designed to overwhelm and terrify their enemies. The coordinated barrage lit up space with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But the human ships were no longer where the Vorthak expected them to be. Captain Park Hyejeon watched the enemy fire pass harmlessly through space, where the human fleet had been positioned just minutes earlier. "Excellent work, Helm. Take us to attack position Beta. Weapons, prepare to engage the enemy heavy cruisers on the starboard flank." The Soul's Vengeance moved with the deadly grace of a predator, its engines pushing the massive ship through evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible for civilian vessels. Around it, the rest of the human fleet executed coordinated movements that turned their numerical disadvantage into a series of local superiorities, concentrating their firepower against isolated groups of Vorthak ships. Flight leader Han Minji led her squadron of fighters through the chaos of the battlefield, her voice calm over the communication system, despite the intensity of the combat around her. "Red Squadron, target the enemy point defense systems. Blue Squadron, cover the boarding shuttles. Gold Squadron, with me on the command ship." The human fighters moved through space like schools of deadly fish, too small and fast for the Vorthak, heavy weapons to track effectively. The enemy had designed their ships to fight other large vessels, not to deal with swarms of small, highly maneuverable craft that attacked from every direction at once. "This is impossible," muttered the Vorthak tactical officer as he watched human fighters weave through his ship's defensive fire without taking significant losses. "Our weapons cannot lock onto targets moving at those speeds with such unpredictable flight patterns." War leader Grimthax was beginning to understand that he was not facing the kind of enemy he had spent his career conquering. These humans fought with a coordination and tactical sophistication that spoke of real military experience, not the desperate resistance of civilian populations trying to defend their homes. Chief Petty Officer Nam Dong-wook monitored the damage control systems aboard. The Soul's Vengeance's Vorthak return fire found its target. "Hull breach on Deck 7, but the emergency barriers are holding. Engineering teams are already responding to the damage." The difference between human and Vorthak ship design became apparent as the battle continued. When Vorthak ships took damage, they tended to suffer catastrophic failures as their intimidation-focused construction proved inadequate for sustained combat. Human ships, built with the expectation that they would be shot at and need to keep fighting, absorbed punishment and continued operating with only minor reductions in effectiveness. Major Lim Sunwoo led the first boarding party through the airlock of a captured Vorthak cruiser, his powered armor allowing him to move quickly through the enemy ship's corridors. "Resistance is lighter than expected," he reported over the communication system. "Most of the crew appears to be automated systems and slave labor. Actual Vorthak military personnel are minimal." The boarding teams discovered what human intelligence had suspected. The Vorthak Empire's reputation for invincibility was based largely on fighting enemies who could not or would not fight back effectively. Their ships carried small crews of actual warriors, relying instead on slaves and automated systems to handle most operations. "Commodore Seo, this is Admiral Do-hyun," came the voice over the fleet communication system. "Excellent work with the stealth attacks. Move to Phase 3 and begin targeting their command and control systems." The stealth destroyer struck again, this time focusing on the ships that were coordinating the Vorthak fleet's movements. Without effective communication between vessels, the enemy formation began to break down into individual ships fighting for their own survival rather than as a coordinated force. Engineer Choi Suman monitored the weapon systems aboard the Soul's Vengeance as the flagship engaged a Vorthak heavy cruiser in direct combat. Primary plasma cannons operating at full efficiency. Missile tubes are cycling normally. Point defense systems are tracking and destroying incoming projectiles with minimal difficulty. The human weapons, designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat, proved devastatingly effective against Vorthak vessels that had never faced serious resistance. Energy shields that could absorb the desperate fire from civilian defense ships crumbled under the sustained assault from military-grade weapons systems. Throughout the battle, the human fleet demonstrated the fundamental difference between professional military forces and the kind of bullying tactics that had made the Vorthak Empire successful. Every human ship knew its role and executed its mission with precision. Every fighter pilot and marine had trained for exactly this kind of operation. Every weapon system and defensive measure had been tested and refined through years of preparation. War leader, "We have lost over 200 ships," reported the tactical officer. His voice barely controlled panic. "The human fleet is operating with tactical coordination we cannot match. Their weapons are more advanced than our intelligence suggested, and their defensive systems are absorbing our attacks with minimal damage." Grimthax stared at the tactical display, watching his supposedly invincible fleet being systematically destroyed by a force less than half its size. "Signal the remaining ships. We will concentrate our entire remaining force on the human flagship. If we can destroy their command ship, perhaps we can break their coordination." The surviving Vorthak vessels, now fewer than 300, began converging on the Soul's Vengeance in a desperate attempt to turn the tide of battle. Captain Park watched their approach with professional interest rather than concern. "Admiral, the enemy is massing for an attack on our position. Should we withdraw and maintain our tactical advantage?" Admiral Do-hyun studied the enemy formation, with the calm analysis of someone who had been in similar situations many times before. "Negative, Captain. Let them come. Signal all ships, protect the flagship, and prepare for maximum engagement. It's time to end this." The final phase of the battle was less a fight than a demonstration of what happened when a military force built around intimidation faced professional soldiers who had spent their entire careers preparing for real combat. The human fleet formed a protective formation around their flagship and systematically destroyed every Vorthak ship that came within range. Fighter squadrons swarmed over enemy vessels like predatory insects, their coordinated attacks overwhelming point defense systems and creating openings for the larger ships to exploit. Boarding parties captured damaged vessels and either turned their weapons against their former comrades or used them as improvised missiles against other targets. "War leader, this is impossible," the tactical officer repeated, his voice now openly terrified. "Our entire fleet is being destroyed by an enemy that should not exist. How can such a small force be so devastatingly effective?" Grimthax had no answer because he had never encountered anything like human military doctrine. His empire had conquered dozens of systems by threatening civilian populations and overwhelming merchant vessels with superior numbers. They had never faced an enemy that shot back with the intention of winning, that planned their battles with mathematical precision, that treated warfare as a professional skill requiring constant training and improvement. "Signal the human flagship," he ordered. His massive form slumped in defeat. "Request terms for surrender." On the Soul's Vengeance, Ensign Bae Jiwoo received the surrender request and looked to Admiral Do-hyun for instructions. The Admiral's expression remained completely cold as he considered the request. "War leader Grimthax has had his chance to withdraw peacefully," he said finally. "He chose to threaten innocent civilians instead. Inform him that surrender is not acceptable. The Vorthak Empire's presence in this system ends today permanently." The battle continued for another 2 hours, but the outcome had been decided in the first 30 minutes. When the firing finally stopped, 23 Vorthak ships remained operational out of the original 512. The human fleet had suffered damage to exactly 0 vessels, with minor injuries to fewer than 50 personnel total. War leader Grimthax sat in the wreckage of his command center, surrounded by the bodies of his bridge crew, waiting for the human boarding parties that would undoubtedly come for him. For the first time in his long career of conquest and cruelty, the silence that followed the battle was more profound than the chaos that had preceded it. Space around HFY, which had been filled with the energy discharges of hundreds of weapons and the debris of destroyed ships, now showed only the quiet aftermath of total human victory. The 23 surviving Vorthak vessels drifted powerless, their crews either dead or too injured to operate their ships. Admiral Do Yun stood on the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance, watching the tactical display that now showed complete human control of the system. 6 hours and 17 minutes had passed since the first shot was fired. In that time, the supposedly invincible Vorthak fleet had been reduced from over 500 ships to fewer than 24 survivors. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from the Kelthani homeworld," reported Ensign Bei Jiwoo, her voice still steady despite having witnessed the most one-sided naval battle in galactic history. The main screen activated to show Ambassador Velthara, but she looked completely different from the terrified being who had sent the original distress call. Her blue skin had regained its healthy color, and her large eyes now showed wonder rather than despair. "Admiral Do-hyun, I speak for all Kelthani when I say that we cannot find words sufficient to express our gratitude. We watched your fleet arrive, and feared that we were asking brave people to die for our sake. We never imagined that such a small force could accomplish what seemed impossible." Admiral Do-hyun's expression softened slightly as he looked at the relief on the ambassador's face. "Ambassador Velthara, the Kelthani people owe us nothing. We came here because threatening innocent civilians is unacceptable to human moral standards. Your safety is thanks enough." Dr. An Yu-jung interrupted the conversation from the medical bay, her voice coming over the ship's communication system. "Admiral, we have medical teams ready to transfer to the Kelthani homeworld to assist with any injuries caused by the Vorthak occupation. We also have medical personnel prepared to treat wounded Vorthak survivors if needed." Captain Oh Sung-min, who commanded the Marine detachment responsible for processing prisoners, reported from the captured Vorthak vessels. "Admiral, we have approximately 400 Vorthak survivors in custody. Most are wounded but stable. War Leader Grimthax is requesting to speak with you personally." Admiral Do-yun considered this for a moment. "Transfer him to the Soul's Vengeance. I want to have a conversation with someone who thought enslaving peaceful civilizations was acceptable." 20 minutes later, War Leader Grimthax stood in the human flagship's detention area, his massive form looking strangely diminished despite his physical size. His armor was damaged and scorched, and his reptilian features showed the exhaustion of someone who had watched his entire worldview collapse in a single afternoon. "You wanted to speak with me," Admiral Do-yun said simply, studying the defeated Vorthak commander with professional interest rather than hatred. Grimthax looked up at the human admiral, his voice lacking any of its earlier arrogance. "I have conquered 47 star systems in my career. I have commanded fleets that destroyed entire civilizations. I have never encountered anything like what your species did today. What we did today was protect innocent people from a bully," Admiral Do-yun replied. "Nothing more, nothing less." "Impossible," Grimthax said, shaking his massive head. "Your fleet was outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Your ships should not have been able to coordinate so effectively. Your weapons should not have been so devastatingly superior to ours. What you accomplished today defies everything I understand about military power." Admiral Do-hyun walked closer to the detention field, his expression thoughtful. "War Leader Grimthax, your empire made a fundamental error. You confused the ability to terrorize civilians with actual military capability. You became so accustomed to easy victories against helpless populations that you forgot what real warfare looks like." He paused, studying the defeated commander. "Humans evolved on a world so dangerous that the galaxy calls it a death world. We learned to fight for survival against enemies that wanted to kill us, not enslave us. When we developed spaceflight, we brought those same survival instincts with us. Every human ship is built with the assumption that it will face enemy fire and need to keep fighting while damaged." Grimthax listened with the attention of someone trying to understand his own defeat. "But your numbers were still inferior. How did so few ships destroy so many?" "Because we fight as a coordinated military force, not as individual ships trying to intimidate civilians," Admiral Do-hyun explained. "Every human pilot has trained for years to work as part of a larger tactical unit. Every ship captain understands their role in the overall battle plan. Every Marine has practiced boarding operations and ship-to-ship combat until it becomes instinctive. Dr. Kim Jae-won joined the conversation, having completed his analysis of the battle's aftermath. War leader, your empire's tactics were perfectly designed for conquering peaceful species who had no experience with real warfare. Unfortunately for you, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years before we ever left our home planet. Communication system activated with a priority message from Earth. Admiral Do-hyun, this is General Song Min-ho. The Galactic Council is requesting an immediate report on the situation in the Kelthan system. Apparently, several Council species are expressing concern about the speed and effectiveness of our response. Admiral Do-hyun activated his personal communicator. General Song informed the Council that the Vorthak threat to the Kelthani people has been eliminated. All hostile forces have been neutralized, and the system is secure. Admiral, they're specifically asking about casualties and the fate of the Vorthak fleet. Tell them the truth, Admiral Do-hyun replied. The human defense fleet engaged and defeated a Vorthak force of over 500 ships with 0 human casualties and minimal damage to our vessels. Vorthak survivors are being treated according to standard medical protocols and will be repatriated to their home system with a clear message about future behavior. Ambassador Keth Lara, the senior Kelthani representative, appeared on the main communication screen. Admiral Do-hyun, our people would like to express our gratitude in a more formal manner. We understand that humans value practical assistance over ceremonial gestures. How can the Kelthani Republic best demonstrate our appreciation for what you have done? Captain Park looked at Admiral Do-hyun, recognizing the diplomatic opportunity. Admiral, the Kelthani are renowned throughout the galaxy for their artistic and cultural achievements. Perhaps cultural exchange would be more valuable than material compensation. Ambassador Keth Lara, the Kelthani people owe us nothing, Admiral, Do-hyun said. However, if you wish to express gratitude, we would be honored to establish cultural and educational exchanges between our species. Human children would benefit greatly from exposure to Kelthani art and philosophy. As the human fleet began organizing the aftermath of their victory, reports started arriving from across the galaxy. The news of the Vorthak defeat was spreading through galactic communication networks with unprecedented speed. Species that had lived in fear of Vorthak expansion were celebrating, while potential aggressors were reconsidering their plans. Dr. An Yu-jung reported from the medical facilities. Admiral, we've treated over 2,000 Kelthani civilians who were injured during the Vorthak occupation. Most injuries were relatively minor, suggesting the Vorthak were more interested in intimidation than actual violence. All patients are expected to recover fully. Major Lim Sunwoo provided the military assessment. Admiral, our analysis of captured Vorthak vessels confirms Dr. Kim's intelligence reports. Their ships were designed for psychological warfare against civilian populations, not military engagement against professional forces. Their weapons, while impressive-looking, were not particularly effective against proper military armor and shielding. Engineer Choi Soo-min completed her technical analysis. Admiral, the Vorthak technology is actually quite advanced in some areas, particularly their faster-than-light travel systems. However, their weapons and defensive systems appear to have been developed specifically for use against non-military targets. They never expected to face an enemy that would shoot back effectively. As the immediate crisis came to an end, Admiral Do-hyun composed his final message to the Vorthak Empire's High Command. The transmission would be broadcast not only to Vorthak space, but to every council species and independent civilization within communication range. This is Admiral Lee Do-hyun of the Human Defense Fleet, speaking to the Vorthak Empire and any other species considering aggressive action against peaceful civilizations. Today you learned what happens when you threaten innocent people while humans have the power to intervene. The Kelthani people are under human protection, as are all council species and any other civilization that desires to live in peace. His voice carried the calm authority of someone who had just demonstrated exactly what human protection meant. The Vorthak Empire will withdraw all military forces to its original territorial boundaries and will make no further aggressive moves against any species. Any violation of this directive will result in the complete destruction of Vorthak military capability by human forces. The message concluded with words that would be repeated throughout the galaxy for generations to come.